What's good, y'all? Shagar Makai. Welcome back to my channel. Make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on post notifications. And make sure if you're new, you hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, and every subscriber helps. And today we're going to be talking about some recent trade rumors that have, made their way into the NBA circle. And that's the fact that Philadelphia would like to trade for James Harden. Now, when it comes to this trade, you have to be realistic with yourselves. There's no way, on God's earth that Philly is going to be trading for James Harden without giving up Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons. And that's if Houston even entertains a trade like that. Because when you think about it, would a team of James Harden, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid not be the title favorites? Yeah. You're going to have two relatively top 10 guys in James Harden and Joel Embiid, a top 15 guy in Ben Simmons. You finally give Ben Simmons some ball relievement. He doesn't have to hold the ball the whole game. You get James Harden, better stars than Russell Westbrook. Would it work? Would that team compete for a title? Like, seriously? 100%. But you got to realize, does a trade like that make sense for Houston? Even if Houston was rebuilding, do they want to rebuild with a bunch of, Philly's throwaway guys? Because, what would a trade look like where they get to keep Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid? They got to give up Tobias Harris, because you got to realize, James Harden is one of the biggest contracts in the NBA. I think he's scheduled to make, $38 million? So you're going to have to give up Tobias. You're going to have to give up Al Horford. I imagine you're going to have to give up Josh Richardson. They got the 21st pick this year that has to go. They got 4 second-rounders. You're going to have to give up at least 2 of those. It would have to be a huge, huge package. It'll remind me of the package that New York gave for Carmelo. Because you're going to have to gut your whole entire roster just to get this one guy. And if it don't work, then you're gonna feel stupid in the end. You're gonna feel silly. Now, is this a realistic trade, or is it just one of those fun, silly off-season rumors? Like, oh yeah, sure, we'd love to have James Harden. And would this trade even really be talked about if Daryl Morey wasn't in Philly right now after leaving Houston? No, it would not. And I'm excited to see what happens in Houston this year. James Harden finally got not rid of, because Mike D'Antoni is a winner. They won a lot of games, but they didn't win any championships or even appear in the finals. But James Harden finally gets to be out of that Mike D'Antoni, Daryl Morey, shoot a million threes and hope for the best system. And I'm excited to see what happens, when he switches up his game a little bit, goes back to taking mid ranges, doesn't always settle for the three. And I want to see Houston, with a lot more motion involved, because when you think about it, isolation ball doesn't really work. We have a guy like Westbrook as your co-star. Because if Westbrook is just standing at the three-point line, it's easier to send 2 at James Harden, because, of course, the team is going to let Westbrook shoot. But, it's a ridiculous idea. And, Stephen A., he always says crazy things like this. I think he said for the Lakers to trade Kyle Kuzma and some picks for Devin Booker. Now he's saying, for Philly to trade whatever for James Harden and keep Ben Simmons and keep Joel Embiid. And it's just like, that doesn't make any sense. Because obviously, if Houston is going to rebuild, they're going to want a guy like Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is the perfect rebuilding piece. 24 years old, a great, he's going to be a great star in this league. One day he might be the best player in this league. If he develops a jump shot. If he doesn't develop one, then I don't know. He's still going to be a top player, but it's like, he's never going to be the best player with no jump shot. With a jump shot, he's automatically top 10 in my opinion. But what would a trade look like if Houston was looking to rebuild? I imagine you're going to have to give up Ben Simmons. They're probably going to want Josh Richardson, yeah. They're going to want Josh Richardson. And then beyond that, you're going to have to throw in a lot of draft picks. But, Houston's owner has been very clear. He has no intention on trading Westbrook, no intention on trading James Harden. He's, all in on a new coach, Steven Silas, however you say his last name. And, I want to see what he has to do, what he can do. Because he came from that great offense in, Dallas, the Mavericks. And they had the number 1 offense this year, if I'm not mistaken. So, Houston is a great offensive team. James Harden is amazing, all-time offensive talent. So, with an offensive-minded coach, again, but this time one who's not so reliant on three-point shooting. Well, then again, he might be relying on three-point shooting because the Mavericks did shoot a lot of threes. But, we have another offensive-minded coach. James Harden is always going to get his. He's always going to average, 30, 35, 36. He's always going to get his numbers when it comes to points and assists, but I just don't see a trade happening between them. At least not this year. Because let's say, Houston goes along this year with the same roster they have, but maybe they get a center to, fill the void down low. If they still, have a disappointing season, which most likely, more than not, they will, because I don't think they can compete with, the teams like Golden State, the Clippers, LA, the Lakers. Like, I don't really see them competing, even with Dallas, really, because Dallas is really on the come up. I don't really see them competing all that well in the West. So let's say next year ends in disappointment. They're a first round exit, second round exit. Let's say James Harden, is finally tired of losing in Houston. He's putting up all these points, but what does it really mean? If he requests a trade, I can't think of a better trade partner than Philly, because if you can somehow convince them, not somehow convince them, when you convince them to give you Ben Simmons, you get to go into full rebuild mode. Ben Simmons is a great point guard for the future. And then, Philly gets to have James Harden and Joel Embiid. And, we would really get to see what Joel Embiid can do with a guy who can space the floor better, because then Joel Embiid can do more post work, and he can finally kick it out to somebody without having to worry about, 20 people, swarming him in the paint. But, to address the title of the video, will the 76ers trade for James Harden? Or whatever the title was, will James Harden be traded to the Philadelphia 76ers? The answer is a firm no. Because no trade right now is feasible. No trade right now makes sense. You'd have to give up a lot, and Houston couldn't have been more clear. They're not trading both of their stars. Because if they were trading both of their stars, what would be the reason to hire a new head coach? What would be the reason to, get rid of your GM? Not get rid of him, because I think he left on his own, but what would be the reason to change so much stuff just for a rebuild? And I don't think they're going to do a rebuild next year, but, we're going to have to see, because every star has their breaking point, especially these days. These days, stars have their breaking point. If I'm doing all this, I'm scoring all this, I'm winning, MVPs, or I'm competing for MVPs every year, and it all means nothing. When I'm not winning championships, it's like, maybe I should look elsewhere. And, I don't think Westbrook can be the second guy in Houston, because honestly, James Harden and Russell Westbrook don't really work together. I think they only, paired them together because they know each other, Like, they grew up in LA together, they have history together. But other than chemistry, I don't really know how their games fit. Westbrook needs the ball to be effective. James Harden is very ball dominant as well. So it's kind of like every year they'd have to do what they did this season. They're going to have to take turns. They're going to have to take turns, ISOing. They're going to have to take turns with the ball. But this time, maybe Westbrook can do more, cutting stuff. Maybe Westbrook can learn to play off the ball better. But honestly, if you're going to stick with these two, Westbrook's going to need to have the ball more than Harden. James Harden can be much more effective off ball than Russell Westbrook can. And, I just think if Houston has any shot of competing, they really have to find a better second guy next to James Harden. And if I can entertain a trade offer for Westbrook for maybe an elite big man, and I don't know of a trade offer right now off the top of my head. I don't know if any elite big guys are out there on the trade market. But if I'm Houston, I'm looking to get a great, center, a great dominant center. And if I can make that package around Russell Westbrook, I'm doing it in a heartbeat. But yeah, if you stay to the end of this video, thank you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.